At a time where results matter more than anything else, it's often the manager who will burden the blame when things go wrong. Especially in the Premier League, where money is such a motivating factor and relegation or not qualifying for the Champions League can have terrible consequences. Now we're seeing managers get sacked so much quicker than we used to. In this video, we'll discuss the reasons for this, as well as looking at some cases where managers have been afforded time and applying them to managers who are currently under pressure. This is why Premier League clubs need to be more patient with their managers. Right, let's talk about Premier League managers then, Harry, and more specifically, why Premier League clubs need to be more patient with them. Let's first talk about why managers are so sacked so quickly. Why do you think it is, Harry?
Yeah, I think it's a mixture of a few things, actually. You have a lot of teams that will like to panic. There are a lot of board members out there, a lot of owners who see their business, or as they view it, or their club falling expectations, and they panic and they just fire the manager. Or you have supporter pressure. Some managers, some boards will feel the pressure from the fans. The fans start turning on the manager, and then suddenly you're kind of forced to sack the manager. Sometimes they fall out with players. It's a variety of different things that can play into it.
Indeed, and managers are the most expendable in the setup of the club. You're not going to get rid of your director of football quite as easily as you could get rid of your manager and bring in another one. You're not going to get rid of your entire playing staff as quickly as you can sack the one guy that is running them. So in that sense, the manager is the easiest person to get rid of, and as a consequence, when things go wrong, it tends to be the manager who gets the burden with the blame. So I think that does result in them being sackings. I think we've seen an increased amount of sackings because of who owns football clubs now. It's not it's not fans of the club. It's not people who love the club. It's people who want to make money. And therefore, if a club is a bit close to being relegated, they're under pressure because you cannot drop out the top flight if you want to make loads of money. And if you're a club that should be in the Champions League and you're not, then there's also pressure there because you need to be in the Champions League. So we are seeing that power struggle and that strive and that drive to earn more and more money, resulting in managers being under really unrealistic expectations because there's only 4 Champions League spots. So how on earth can, the 6 clubs that want to be in there, 7 if you count Aston Villa now, that want to be in there, it's very, very difficult. They can't all get in there. Very difficult for them to all get into Europe without there being a surprise package. So I think that the expectations are just being set too high now, and therefore managers are sort of doomed to fail them in some respects. So let's talk about managers who have been afforded time then, before we look at some of the under-fire managers in the Premier League right now and discuss whether they deserve more time or not. So I want to look at some case studies. First, I want to talk about Mikel Arteta, because obviously Arteta right now, very, very successful. Arsenal pushing for the Premier League title. They're still in the Champions League, where they'll play Bayern Munich in the quarter-final stage. But not all been rosy for Arteta. So he took over on the 26th of December 2019. Do you remember much about his first year in charge, Harry?
I think, actually, I saw recently that people were looking at his lineup in his first game compared to his lineup now, and the contrast is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Like, that side that he inherited, let's be honest, let's not beat around the bush, it was crap.
Yeah, he had, so that first 6 months to the end of the season, it wasn't too bad. There's nothing particularly stunning there, and it did feel like, though, that they were missing a lot of creativity in midfield. The first half of the 2020-2021 campaign was very difficult for Arsenal, and it looked like going into Boxing Day 2020, it looked like he was going to be sacked. However, he ended up getting away with that one. He ended up not being sacked because he beat Chelsea 3-1. And it shows how his entire job relied on one match. And if they'd sacked him in that moment, where would Arsenal be right now? Yeah. So I think affording managers time is so crucial sometimes, because Arteta had a really tough start to that season. Arsenal was struggling. It was quite a poor campaign. And I think that, coupled with the fact they went on to win the FA Cup at the end of the season, has kept him in a job. But when it's such fine margins like that, one result really changed that whole opinion. The opinion of the press going into that game was Arteta will be sacked if they lose this one. They won that one. They took momentum. I think they beat Bournemouth or someone like that the week after. And then rest is history. We reached present point where Mikel Arteta is one of the most highly rated managers in world football right now, where his squad is full of players that are coveted world superstars. It's incredible, really, how dramatic that change has been. And while obviously there's been structural changes at Arsenal, and we've seen them really change up their recruitment process. I mean, they're focused on only signing young players. So we saw them bring in players like Ben White, more recently Declan Rice, Takahiro Tomiyasu, Gabriel Jesus. I know he's a little older than 23, but still, he's still not an old player by any stretch. So they've definitely switched from just signing old Chelsea players. Now they have gone back to that with Jorginho, but still, we've seen huge changes under Mikel Arteta. They've gone from a side that looked very poor to a side that are competing for the Premier League title.
Yeah, and it's something phenomenal. But it's kind of expected. You know, all these managers that have legacies and have created dynasties at their clubs, they didn't come in and have instant success. You know, the managers who have been there for years and years and years didn't just turn up to the squad and in year one they were battering teams left, right, and centre.
Yeah,
you know, managers at the top of their game. They take time to get used to their squad. They take time to build these. And now we look back at some of the best managers of all time. We look like Sir Alex Ferguson. How long is at Man United? But, he didn't come in and start winning trebles in season 1 or quadruples in season.
Wasn't far off, to be fair.
He wasn't far off. He's very, very good.
But for a more recent example, he's not on my list of managers we're going to look at today, but he's a good example. Pep Guardiola. Even in his first season at Manchester City, they didn't win anything.
No.
You know, they were fourth in the Premier League. It was a very dismal campaign. In fact, they didn't win the title again the season after that. It was Chelsea. Obviously, now they've got 6 Premier League titles in the last 7 years or something ridiculous like that. Maybe 5. But anyway, whatever the statistic is, they've been ridiculously good. The other coach I want to look at, also currently in the Premier League, is Andoni Iraola. So Iraola came in last summer, replaced Gary O'Neill, and it was quite a controversial change from Bournemouth because obviously, while Gary O'Neill had done a great job, Iraola was a great coach, it felt like because O'Neill had done such a good job, he deserved more time. And as we're seeing now with him at Wolves, he's a very good manager. Has he got a higher ceiling than Iraola? Probably not. But Bournemouth took that gamble on Iraola because he was more unknown to the Premier League when he came in, and that was proven because in the first 9 games they didn't win a match. And at that point, it would have been very easy for the Bournemouth owners to panic because they'd invested.
Over, didn't they, by Liverpool 9-0?
Well, exactly. They'd invested a lot of money into that side, and it would have been Wasn't that last season?
Oh, I thought it was this year.
That was Graham Potter, not Graham Potter. Scott Parker.
Oh yeah.
I don't think that was.
I swear they got turned over this year.
I don't think it was 9. I think they did
7?
lose. Maybe
they
7.
got backed by somebody.
Maybe so, but yeah, they had a nightmare start to the season. Didn't get a win in their first 9 matches. But now we're looking at a side who have Dom Solanke as one of the top scorers in the league. Bournemouth look more than comfortable to stay up from relegation. And it's been such a quick change, and it would have been easy after 9 games for Bournemouth to go, well, you're gone, mate. That, you failed. We've had a mare. I mean, you think back to Palace a couple of seasons ago. Frank de Boer lasted 4 matches. They lost them all, and he was gone. That's how quickly managers are getting sacked. And a great example as well would be Watford, but we all know the history of those. They sack their manager every 8 months. So if that, it's much quicker than that usually. But yeah, I think it's very difficult to judge because obviously we have to understand that from a board on recruitment level, from that upper management level, their focus has to be on performance and on the financial side. And if they're at risk of going down, they've got to make a very difficult decision. But I think there's a very good argument to be had that managers do deserve more time in the Premier League, as shown by some of the examples we've discussed. Let's apply that now. Well, actually, first, let's judge. How do you judge when to be patient? And when do you judge when push comes to shove?
I think you have to bring every factor into it. And I think the 2 examples we've had are absolutely brilliant at that. Because Bournemouth had to look at it and go, we have a fantastic manager here that is unknown to the Premier League. But rather than push him and sack him, they thought they could see that if we're patient here and give him time to adjust to the Premier League, he will provide us with success.
Yeah.
And you've got, I think it helps that it's Bournemouth and it wasn't as high up the league.
But they were arguably worse because if they'd gone down, Bournemouth, that would be a huge financial.
Maybe so, but it's that whole. I feel like towards the top of the league, it is very much money focused. So it's like that's why so many teams will turn. If we're not in the Champions League, why are we not the champ? We don't make any money. Why are we not making money? Because we've underperformed. Why have we underperformed? Manager, you're gone.
But also trophies because they have fan bases that demand success. There's fan bases there that want to see a trophy every season. If not, that season's been a failure. and there's not enough trophies to go around. So inevitably, someone's got to fail. Not everyone can be successful in the Premier League.
It also depends what position you're in, because even when Arteta came into Arsenal, they hadn't come off the back of like loads of trophy full seasons. They hadn't won titles and things like that. So when Arteta came in, there was it's that lack of expectation.
They came off that Emery disaster.
Exactly. It's that lack of expectation for Arteta that really helped him, because he wasn't expected to come in season 1 and win trophies, which meant that not only were the board patient, so were the fans, and now the results are coming in, and now they're starting to pick up trophies over the last few years.
They gave him time, they gave him investment, and it's paid dividends, because they could see the thing. I think with Anthony Areola in particular, it's about measuring success by performances and not results. And I think if a lot of the stats for those first 9 games were showing that Bournemouth should have won some of those matches.
Yeah.
And that's been shown in the fact they have gone on in this second half of the season and really shown their quality. Dom Solanke has had a magnificent campaign. I think he's on 15 goals now for the season. And it definitely shows that performance should be judged on performance and not on results. And I would say until you get to March, maybe late Feb's time, no manager should be sacked for results.
Yeah.
It should be for performance. So equally, but I think the Premier's judged it quite well this season. You look at Sheffield United, I think that was a good sacking because the performance wasn't there, the results weren't there. Late. Forest, I can understand. I think that was a bit of a rushed call.
It was a weird one.
Well,
he gave him a new contract and then sacked him.
Well, that is what's his name? Mavronakis?
Oh, yeah.
That is him all over, isn't it? But yeah, I think that the Premier League clubs seem to be getting better at judging it because they're taking a more data-focused approach rather than just going gun-ho. I think we may well be out of that period now where managers just get sacked randomly.
Yeah,
I think we might be out of that period, and now because we had it where, you know, managers would be afforded time. Then we had it where the money came in, and, you know, it all become this huge race to the top. And now it might just be settling down again because everyone's on an equal playing field.
Yeah.
Everyone is owned by billionaires, so it's equal.
Yeah. Also, I know we'll get onto examples in a minute, but just because he's not on the list, where do you stand on Vincent Kompany?
I agree with Burnley's decision not to sack him so far.
I think it's an interesting one because I've never seen a side not get results like not perform the way. It's a hard one because, to be fair, recently
it feels like they're resigning themselves to relegation.
Yeah.
But then relegation isn't the worst thing for Burnley. Obviously, for the fans, it's horrible. They're going back to the Championship. They want to be in the Premier League.
They'll come straight back up there.
Well, that's what they think, isn't it? It may not be that easy, but they saw last year how they were able to invest more money than anyone else in the league, and they pissed the league.
Yeah.
And they're seeing again how Leicester are doing it this season. They'll still be in receipt of parachute payments, so it's not like they'll take a huge financial hit. They'll sell off the young talents they bought last summer, possibly with an added price to them. Anyone that stays is going to be more than good enough for the Championship.
Yeah.
So for Burnley, I can understand why they've not sacked Vincent Kompany, because financially they won't take too much of a hit from being relegated, and the stability keeping a manager in for this over this period should mean they come up again next year.
Yeah, 100%.
I think, though, it's more interesting when we look at other examples. So, which Premier League managers deserve more time, which Premier League managers don't? Let's start in London. Let's start at Stamford Bridge with Mauricio Pochettino. I feel like we could do a 2-hour-long video on Chelsea and Pochettino, and we could discuss all the different things. But let's give a brief overview. Is Pochettino at the moment the right man for Chelsea?
Yeah, I this is an easy answer for me. This is 100%. Give him time. The results, the performance is there. Do you look at the way that Chelsea have played this season? You look at some of the games that Chelsea have done so well and have looked so good in, and that performance is there. It's just those results need to be turning over. I look at the Newcastle game last weekend. You know, yes, that was a Newcastle who are struggling, but it was a really, really good performance from Chelsea. The draws against City, both home and away, really, really good results.
Yeah.
You know, Liverpool on the opening day. There's loads of games in there that were good performances from Chelsea. The problem is they're too dotted around. They're not consistent enough.
Yeah, it does feel very risky, though, recording this video before their FA Cup game, because Pochettino could be sacked by the time we release this, which would be terrible timing, really, for us. But For me, I will come from a very different point of view. I think that Pochettino tactically is too basic for the current era of the Premier League. I don't think tactically he's inept enough. I think that clearly he hasn't developed much since when he came into the Premier League, and the Premier League has developed at a much faster rate. If you look at when Pochettino first came into the Prem, it was 10 years ago now. When he came into Southampton, 2014, 2015, something like that. And obviously had success there, then had success at Tottenham. Now he's been off to PSG and he's come back. I'm just not sure whether, even if the players start performing at their highest level, whether he's tactically good enough to compete with the top managers in the Premier League, and in which case, are we wasting time? However, I don't see any point in sacking him right now, because nobody's available on the market. You're not getting a Ruben Amorim, though I have my concerns about him regardless. You're not getting a Simone Inzaghi until the end of the season at the very earliest. I don't see who you go and get right now across the world football landscape.
Yeah, and the thing for Pochettino, and this is for every other Chelsea manager we've seen over the last 2 or 3 years, is that it is a complete. I think the easiest way to look at it is compare it to Arteta. Arteta came in after Arsenal had a really poor couple of years, so there was no expectation on him. The problem is that for the likes of Potter, and then obviously Lampard to the end of the season, and after Tuchel was sacked, whoever then came in, because Chelsea had just won the Champions League, whoever then came in to replace Tuchel was expected to bring instant success.
Yeah.
Because we'd just sacked our Champions League winning manager from the year before. All Chelsea fans and the Chelsea board, Todd Bowley, whoever, all expected Potter to come in and bring success. He didn't, so they panicked, sacked him, brought in Lampard. That was just out to the end of the season. But again,
that made no sense.
Exactly, that made no sense. They were panicking. Chelsea were panicking because they wanted instant success and they hadn't got it. Brought Pochettino in this year. Again, thought that Chelsea would bring success. And to be fair to him, he's got us to a final. He got Chelsea to a final. And that's as close as close as you can get to winning a trophy. And obviously the FA Cup is still to play for. Only a couple points off European places now. I feel like it's coming for Poch. The tide is turning. And he does deserve more
I think
time.
there's a lot he needs to work on tactically. Maybe that's something that will change this summer. I think that Chelsea's big moment, the Mikel Arteta-esque moment, was sacking Potter. Because I think that given a couple more months, maybe then we're going to the summer and actually we weren't in such a bad position. Maybe we come out of that summer and we play this season with Potter as manager a whole lot better, given he would have had a year in charge, or it would have been his first full season in charge. He would have had a summer of recruitment there. Maybe we'd be looking now in a much more positive light. I think, though, this Pochettino FA Cup run is the Arteta FA Cup run all over again. If Pochettino goes on to win the FA Cup this year, he will be afforded another 6 months at least at Chelsea.
I think even Chelsea get to the final. 2 finals in your first year with this shit show.
Agreed, but equally to lose both of them, especially if it was to be in the manner that we lost the Liverpool one again.
I'm fed up losing to Liverpool in domestic finals.
Well, they've got to beat United first, which they will. We expect this if we're recording in advance again. But I think that given how we lost the Carabao Cup final, given it does, I think the blame does lie on Poch there. I think that there is a strong case that he'll go this summer. But I don't think there's any point sacking him in the meantime.
Yeah, all right.
Let's look at some other examples. Ange Postecoglou. Now, this is a mental one for me, but I was scrolling through Twitter earlier today, a bit and yesterday, and I saw Tottenham fans debating Ange Postecoglou's future because they had an incredible start to the campaign. They're in the title fight for the first 10 games, but we're talking the morning after the loss to Fulham. And there seems to be a bit of animosity there towards Ange, and a lot of people doubting his ability regarding, changes in game, adapting tactically to opposition, whether he's too aggressive for the Premier League. What do you make of these concerns?
There's nothing to say on this one. This is Tottenham fans who have got too big for their boots. After the great start to the season, they thought they were the shit, and they think they now deserve to be fighting for the title. They think that's where they belong, but actually they need to realise that it was just a very good start to the season, and they can't now, just because they're not fighting at the front anymore, can't mean that they just sack Postecoglou. He's doing the best of what no other manager has done in the last few years since Pochettino, you could argue, and because they had such good success so quickly, Tottenham fans now expect that, but they need to realise that they're not actually that good, and that sitting in 5th right now in the Premier League, I'd bloody take it.
I think that, Ange deserves his flowers for this season, because you look at the context of him coming in. He's a manager that's got no Premier League experience before. He was joining a Tottenham side in transition. They've lost Harry Kane. They've not signed a striker to replace him. So, quite frankly, it's incredible they're even in the position they are. He also dealt with a huge injury crisis. At one point this season, they had no James Maddison. They had no Christian Romero. I think he was suspended. Probably. Mickey van der Ven was out injured. They've had Son with a spell on the sidelines and at the Asian Cup.
Yeah, but everyone's got injuries.
But he's handled that. In addition to the fact they lost their star striker going into this season, and yet they're still up there competing. And I think, therefore, especially given the great feeling he seems to have cultivated around the squad, there seems to be a really positive atmosphere working under Ange, and he's got most fans seem to love him. I don't think there's any reason to go and blow that up because of some difficult results in March.
It's Tottenham to shut up, because if next week they go in 4-0, we won't hear a peep. We won't hear a word of that. They just need to stop being so fickle and get on with it.
I think they'll win enough games between now and the end of the season to confirm Champions League football. It looks very likely the Premier League will have a 5th Champions League spot, unless Bayer Leverkusen win the Europa League, Bayern and Dortmund get into the final of the Champions League, and all the English clubs get knocked out in the current quarter-final stage of all of the competitions. But I think, it is fairly confirmed now that we will have a 5th Champions League spot. And realistically, the teams below them, are they going to compete for it? No. Manchester United are overperforming to the nth degree. It's ridiculous how they're as high as they are, because they've not been very good this season.
Go on to the next.
West Ham have been similar.
Oh, yeah.
Newcastle aren't even there at the moment. Brighton, I don't think, getting Champions League. So for me, Tottenham are very secure in that. Do you want to touch on United?
Yeah, we'll go on to United. I'm fed up with talking about United. This one annoys me.
I might disagree with you, because I want them to stay forever.
No, I do, and this is what I'm saying. I'm fed up of talking about United like they should be top 4. They're not. They're shit. They are utter crap, and they need to realise that. And they need to realise that for a top half side, Ten Hag's a very good manager. And I'm fed up of talking about United like they're a really good side. I really don't want to. So the fact, obviously, the people want Erik Ten Hag, I think he's a terrible manager. I don't think he's been brilliant. I don't think he's handled the squad very well at all. He seems to not like anyone, and no one liked him. But yeah.
Yeah, I think the Manchester United job first, and let's touch on that.
It's a joke.
The Man United job is one of the most difficult jobs in world football, because you have so much to contend with. Now, I'm not going to make loads of excuses for Erik Ten Hag, because there's definitely some blame that lies upon him. There's some fault on his part. But you've had, just this season, you've had Jadon Sancho. Now, you could argue he's dealt with that poorly, but you've still got an issue with, I agree, but he still had that as an issue. He had Mason Greenwood. I don't think Ten Hag can control what Mason Greenwood gets up to in his private life and how he conducts himself around women. So I don't think you can blame Erik Ten Hag for that one. You've got whoever the fuck is making the decisions at Man United regarding transfers, because I'm convinced they must be pissed. Like, what are they thinking with with the deals they make constantly? Yeah.
They got Marcus Rashford, who 1 minute loves the club.
Well, exactly. He's very up and down with his performances. You've got so many inconsistent players. Again, recruitment, a little bit of that comes down to Ten Hag. He pined for Anthony. That was a terrible idea. Equally, you've got to look at the recruitment and say, well, he was available for 60. You turned it down. You then panicked when you didn't have any options and you spent £100 million on him. That is a fundamental failure at boardroom level.
My problem with this is that United side, on paper, is a good team.
They've got a good core.
Which then frustrates me when they play so badly. I look at that side. Onana, Champions League finalist last year. I think the defences are pretty, Dallo, decent centre half. You got right back. Sorry, Maguire, Varane, Lisandro Martinez, all good centre halves. Maguire,
one of them is
upturning form. Maguire, he's been good.
They need a right centre half though.
Well, it works though. He can cut it in a European. It's like, I look at the midfield. Where's the midfield? There's nothing in midfield.
There is Kobe Mainoo. He's incredible, but the fact they're relying on a 17 right now to prop up their midfield shows again, their tragic recruitment. They signed Casemiro, a 31-year-old whose legs were already going, for 60 million. He has no resale value, and he's now terrible. So what are you going to do with him? Scott McTominay, who's never shown any tactical discipline, and yet you have him at a Manchester United side. Where do you play him?
Up front. Look at what he did for Scotland. But it's the same old saying of United. They are rubbish, and they'll blame it on the manager, but sacking the manager won't do anything. But no, United, they'll probably still sack him, bring in someone different, and expect a different result.
It very much depends what Jim Ratcliffe and Ineos are planning on doing. If they decide they're going to create wholesale change across the squad and across the club, where they bring in a functional recruitment staff, where they go and bring in a manager who can work closely with that recruitment staff, then I think there is a chance for United. I don't think Ten Hag is that man. I think he's already lost the trust of the fans. I think he's lost the trust of the club. I think he's lost the trust of the players. And when you lose that, I don't see how you claw it back. For United, I don't think they'll still be in the FA Cup by the time this goes out. I guess we'll see. If they're not, what is there left for them to win this season? I think there's a very good chance they don't get European football at this rate, because while they're there right now, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a resurgent Chelsea towards the end of this season. It's got to come at some point for Chelsea. Could be the end of this campaign. We could see Newcastle fighting again. Brighton are still plodding along nicely. And eventually, United's overperformance has to slip. It can't go on forever where you overperform, you get lucky in every single game. That can't continue forever. So United are riding their luck at the moment, but they may well not have anything to fight for next season if they keep going at this rate. Let's go to talk on then Newcastle. Now, there's a lot to talk about with Newcastle this season because they have had an unprecedented number of injuries. They've had Antonali suspended as well for gambling offences. And so there's been a lot for Eddie Howe to deal with there. They've also had the addition that they can't make any transfers because they have FFP issues. So there is a lot going on there. Now, I don't feel sorry for them at all because they're a club owned by billionaires. But for Eddie Howe, you've got to feel he's been hard done by this season.
He has been. I don't like injuries because everyone's had injuries.
But not everyone has had to play Lewis Miley because he's their only central midfielder that isn't injured.
Yeah,
he's incredible, but
for Howe, it's just not. It's not there at the moment because obviously the results are bad and so are the performances. The Chelsea game was poor. The Arsenal game a few weeks ago was absolutely shocking.
Well, I was going to say I think the City game was a really damning reflection. The fact they went 5 at the back and tried to just hold on.
Terrible. And I think he's in big trouble. They're out of all competitions now. They're 10th in the Premier League, so miles off Europe. There's more chance Chelsea get Europe now than Newcastle for me. I think he's got to go. You can't. I look at that side. I look at how well they did last year to finish bottom of your Champions League group, to be out of both cup competitions pretty early on, and to be
final stage in both is not terrible. And they got City and Chelsea. So, if they'd drawn Coventry, they probably would have gone through. So I don't think you can really judge them too harsh on those results. It's just that if Newcastle have the aspirations that they have, that they want to go on and win things, this has been a down season. Now, again, this could be a situation with Eddie Howe, like with Mikel Arteta, where actually give him a bit of time and he'll bring it back round. Because he's shown last season what he can do. He got to the final of the Carabao Cup in that first full season. He got to Champions League football with a Newcastle side that, quite frankly, shouldn't really have been there.
That's the thing.
This season, they would have probably had a better season if they hadn't had so many injuries. And once they can invest in the summer again, I think they'll be a good squad. It depends how quickly Newcastle want that success and whether they think Howe's the right man.
I think that is the problem, that in the first season with the Saudis coming in, they set the bar way too high. Yeah. How went, obviously, with, as you say, with that cup final, with that top 4 finish, they set the bar for this season too high. Because I don't think that's Newcastle's standard. I think that was a one-off season. But because that's the first season, that's now what all the fans expect, and that's what the board expects. Yeah. And I think that's going to come at Howe's expense, and I think he'll be sacked in the next few weeks.
Okay, I think he'll get to the end of the season at least. I don't think I'm not sure who they would bring in. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a Jose Mourinho or someone like
But again,
that.
because it's billionaires, I think they'll just panic and sack him.
Potentially. It'll be very interesting to see whether. But
Yeah.
the fact they hired Howe in the first place shows they were at least thinking progressively, that they're looking at a promising manager rather than going for someone like
Jose Mourinho.
Like Mourinho. Yeah, a big name appointment. Benitez is currently back in the market. Could he go to Newcastle again? Maybe so. I mean, something stupid like that would be, in my opinion, a bad idea. I think that's everything for today's video. I'm sure you guys will have your own thoughts on all the managers we've discussed, and you can give your take on whether Premier League managers need to be given more time in the comments down below. If you want to keep watching our videos, there's going to be another one on screen now covering Harry's face. You can click that and keep watching. But that is everything from us today. Thank you guys very, very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
See ya.